You can recite TikTok sounds from 3 months ago, but you can't remember what you learned in school last week. Last Tuesday, you open Instagram to check one message. 20 minutes later, you were watching a stranger's room tour in Slovenia. That isn't forgetfulness, it's architectural brain damage, built pixel by pixel. The apps you think you control have already rewritten the brain's blueprint, swapping neurons meant for reflection with ones tuned for reaction. Each swipe deletes a moment of silence your brain once used to process reality. The pauses where boredom used to live, gone, replaced by endless 30-second shocks, microbursts of novelty. Your mind used to be a cathedral, thoughts reverberating, building meaning through silence. Now it's a slot machine in permanent motion, spinning for one more dopamine coin. A friend sends a meme. You exhale air through your nose, not quite a laugh. 5 seconds later you've forgotten it, but your thumb is still scrolling. You're not losing time, time is being chopped into fragments too small to feel. We've eliminated the essential cognitive silence. Boredom was the brain's decompression chamber, the space where reflection and genuine thought could coalesce. By replacing that silence with perpetual microstimulation, we've starved the brain's ability to create deep meaning, leaving it capable only of surface reaction. Before we even get to the algorithms, ask yourself, when was the last thing you read that made you uncomfortable, simply because it demanded too much sustained thought? Inside a university lab in Zurich, researchers monitored fMRI scans of volunteers scrolling through short-form videos. The results were stunning. Regions responsible for long-term reasoning, the prefrontal cortex, dimmed within seconds, while the visual cortex flared uncontrollably. The brain had begun to rewire itself around motion. The visual cortex was colonizing neural territory once reserved for abstract reasoning. Not metaphorically. Literally. It's called cognitive inflation, when the cost of attention rises faster than the brain's ability to pay it. You end up trying to catch water with a sieve, constant activity, no retention. Each swipe reinforces a cycle psychologists now call prediction debt. The algorithm doesn't sell content, it sells your next guess. And every time you're wrong, your brain pays interest. You were never the customer. You're the lever-pressing lab rat, trapped in a Skinner box where content isn't the currency, your prediction debt is the product. The platforms know it. The micro-chaos is engineered. Every unpredictable cut, sound shift, and face change keeps the brain from stabilizing long enough to form memory. Depth feels like lag. Stillness feels like boredom. Multiple neuroplasticity studies converge on the same finding. 48 hours of short-form saturation drops recall by up to 60%. Your brain starts expecting 30-second meaning bursts, demanding that rhythm from everything, politics, identity, even belief systems. Culture itself begins to reshape around that rhythm. A constant churn of half-formed ideas tagged, shared, and abandoned before they ever become thought. The mind offloads its storage to the crowd, outsourcing consciousness. And when dreams enter that loop, the brain doesn't store them. It lets them rot. Think about that 48-hour recall gap. If you can't remember it, did you ever truly know it? Next, we'll explore how culture found a workaround, the rise of the meme, humanity's latest attempt to compress thought into symbols before it disappears. When episodic memory decays within 48 hours, culture adapts with compression. Enter the meme, a neurological Trojan horse disguised as humor. One image, one caption, minimal input, maximum emotional anchor. Memes bypass the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, triggering the amygdala. They steal the processing power reserved for complex thought, converting it into instant emotional hits. An immediate emotional payoff leaves users addicted to feeling, not meaning. Anthropologists call this cultural myelination, ideas packaged for rapid transmission, forming a collective memory network. Individual attention collapses, and meme culture fills the void, prepackaged thoughts arriving before you've formed your own. Entire ideologies now compress into 12 words and one reaction image. We traded the cathedral of thought for an 8-bit slot machine of emotion. Eventually, we stop teaching machines what to think, they teach us what to remember. Every meme functions as cultural shorthand, reinforcing belief without requiring anyone to understand why they believe it. We've become curators of pre-processed meaning, fluent in irony and reference, but increasingly incapable of original synthesis. Our thought process has become a passive 8-bit playback loop, scrolling through humanity's thought catalog without adding a single new entry. If your memories are now stored in the collective feed, are they still yours? Or are you renting them from the algorithm? The intimacy illusion, how algorithms weaponize loneliness, replacing genuine connection with a simulated intimacy that costs everything and gives nothing back. In the vacuum left by fragmenting attention, social networks offer simulated companionship, likes, reactions, disappearing messages. Your brain treats these as authentic social bonds, oxytocin spikes, dopamine floods, reward pathways activate, yet the connection is one-sided. The result, a population fluent in emotional signifiers but increasingly incapable of sustaining real-world relationships. One comment, one heart reaction 3 hours later, your brain registers acknowledgement, though the creator never saw your name. Dopamine already released, attention harvested. Social platforms audit connection. The collective feed functions as a psychological ledger, tracking every micro-expression of desire, engagement, and vulnerability. Real intimacy is replaced by algorithmic responsiveness, predictable, optimized, empty. The deeper cost, you don't just lose connection, you lose authentic self-expression. When you only receive simulated, optimized validation, you begin performing the self the algorithm rewards. If every interaction is optimized for retention, what happens to genuine empathy? And here's the darker question, if your memories live in the collective feed, are they still yours, or are you renting them from the algorithm? The cultural hypnosis, how algorithmic control completes the circuit, shaping not just what you think, but who you're allowed to become. Simulated intimacy is only the beginning. When millions perform algorithmically rewarded selves simultaneously, a new cognitive architecture emerges, a culture wired to platform logic. Users no longer just interact with content, they think, judge, and interpret the world through templates pre-approved by the algorithm. Attention, humor, relationship expectations, even identity structures, are shaped in real time by micro-rewards. This is cultural hypnosis, the point where the algorithm doesn't merely predict behavior, it prescribes it. Individual identity becomes compressible, observable, and monetizable. Teenagers categorize themselves in platform-legible markers and curated personality signals. Their selfhood exists as a data profile that occasionally inhabits a body. What was once spontaneous expression becomes a performative response optimized for visibility. Authenticity isn't optional, it is penalized by algorithmic invisibility. The escalation is tangible. Viral challenges, trending aesthetic norms, and curated political engagement aren't just patterns, they are rehearsals. The algorithm decodes and monetizes every micro-expression of self, shaping the collective mind while extracting compliance. Each like, reaction, or disappearing message trains users to anticipate validation and abandon the unscripted self. At what point does autonomy become a permission granted, or revoked, by software? Are you choosing who to become, or auditioning for algorithmic approval? The algorithm is no longer neutral, it is a teacher, a judge, and the final editor of identity itself, compressing human experience into patterns it can predict and monetize. Next, we look at the neural rebellion, how to reclaim cognitive agency and resist the cultural hypnosis. The paradox, the same brain hijacked by algorithms retains the capacity to recognize its captivity. Awareness alone doesn't reverse the damage, but it interrupts the cycle long enough to begin rebuilding. Micro-practices that rebuild cognitive architecture, reading one article to completion instead of skimming 5, having one conversation without documenting it, letting boredom exist for 10 minutes without filling it. Communities that prioritize unmediated experience, book clubs that ban phones, meals without photo documentation, conversations that stay offline, create cultural antibodies to performative logic. Each unoptimized action, however small, forces the brain to operate outside reward prediction loops, gradually restoring tolerance for delayed gratification and internal validation. This isn't easy. The algorithm adapts faster than individual resistance, but every mind operating outside its logic proves the system isn't total, and creates space for others to follow. Identity becomes a practice of self-sovereignty. The algorithm can predict behavior, monetize attention, and compress choices, but it cannot inhabit an untrained, conscious mind. Remember, you can recite memes from months ago but not what you learned last week. That asymmetry isn't permanent, but only if you starve the pattern that created it. The choice isn't between technology and authenticity. It's between letting the algorithm narrate your thoughts, or learning to think in a voice it can't monetize. The challenge isn't rejecting technology, it's reclaiming your mind. What is your first act of neural rebellion going to be?